Hey, what's up, everybody? Once again, trying to do this video. Today, I want to talk about something other than politics, right? But it has to do with politics. Everything has to do with politics. Politics is people's interests, people's interactions with others, people's history, culture, relationships. Everything is politics, right? I'm going to talk about the nature of the universe. See, this world we living in is an illusion. Everything is electricity, vibrating at different frequencies, right? Low vibrating frequencies are solid. Faster, higher vibrating frequencies are ethereal. Like the air is a higher, frequency. It's soft, transparent, almost even invisible, but it still matters. It's still made of the same materials that the iron and gold and metals is made of. Allegedly protons, neutrons, and electrons, right? Now, I'm gonna prove to you everything's electricity and everything is a hologram. But people saying, okay, the reason it's false, the reason it can't be a hologram is because we see the physical world and we can feel the hard matter. We could be destroyed. This body can be destroyed, right? But when you look at the molecules and the atoms don't touch. The atoms are really invisible, right? Nobody have ever seen an atom before. Now, when you look at an atom, it has a nucleus and it has electrons orbiting the nucleus, right? And this is the model they use to assume that the outer space has planets orbiting the sun, because that's how every atom has a center with electrons orbiting it, right? And the distance between the electrons and the neutrons, and also the density of the protons and neutrons, but really the distance between the electrons and the nucleus determines the mass of the atom. And there's nothing in between. Is invisible matter that separates the electrons from the neutrons and protons, right? And each atom is attracted to its like kind. It's electric. It's an electric charge that bonds the atoms together, almost inseparable. That's where you can have a solid piece of iron, you can have a solid piece of wood, you can have oil. Really, the easiest example is oil and water. Even though they're both are liquid, you could obviously they're totally separate from each other. But none of those atoms are actually touching. It's actually bonded by electricity. And also the atom itself, most of the atom is invisible. It's ether. And we look at this coat, this hoodie, saying, how can that be true? How is it connected? It's electricity. It's just different frequencies, different vibrations of electricity that determines the different, densities. Some are more dense, some are less dense. And this is the meaning behind the pyramid. The denser the atom, the lower the vibration, the heavier it is. But all the atoms itself is attracted to the ground. Everything must hit the ground. Now, it was a guy, his name was Leonard Euler. He was a Swiss Moor. They call him the father of mathematics, right? Him and Euler. Euler was an Egyptian. And no, Euclid was an Egyptian. And Euler was he was Swiss. He was a Moor from Switzerland. But Euler was the one, they claim, this is what they claim. It's not true, but they claim this because they got to give credit to somebody. Euler was the one that introduced the variables into algebra, like X, Y, E, N, all this type of stuff. Also, he actually created calculus, topography, but he also developed string theory, right? And string theory, this was in the 1700s. String theory goes into the elements of the atoms itself, like subatomic particles, right? And they say all the atoms, everything is made up of strings. And these strings are literally energy vibrations attached to the ground. Literally, stuck to the ground. And they say there's different grounds that we can't even see, different layers that we can't even see with our eyes. And it makes sense. People think this world is real, but we're not necessarily figments of our imagination. We're not necessarily not physical itself, but the physical world is based on imagination. Really, literally, electricity. That's why you could burn wood and get energy out of it. You could turn anything into energy. Anything could be converted to energy because everything is made of electricity. People just don't realize it. Now, I read this book. It's called The Emerald Tablets. And it was a man. He's an Egyptian god. They call him an Egyptian god, right? His name was Thoth. 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 And Thoth was really from Atlantis. Now, the history came out recently. Not recently, but this been known for hundreds of years, that America is actually Atlantis, right? And even Plato in 450 BC wrote about Atlantis, but he described Chicago. Really, if you really look at what he said, he's describing Chicago as the center, and it has 7 god kings, right? Well, we have god kings right now. The Pope is allegedly the vicegerent. In the Quran, they call him the vicegerent. But they talk about the Khalifa. He's like a god king. And the Pope, they call him the father. And the Egyptian, the Pharaoh we still got god kings, but they say America has 7 god kings who ruled from underground. And Thoth had to flee Atlantis because he said they was practicing a craft that was forbidden and they had to be destroyed, and he had to flee. So he went to Egypt and set up Egypt, right? But he described how he ascended while he was still living. He literally became pure energy. And when he became pure energy, he had the ability to travel time and space with just his thoughts. But he said the way he was able to achieve this next step, this next level, he say he controlled his desire, and his only desire was to gain wisdom. He had no desire for gain, no desire for money, nothing else. He just had desire for wisdom, similar to King Solomon. How when he just desired wisdom, and the Most High blessed him with that and everything else. But when Thoth, he said he became a ball of energy. And when he traveled through the outer space, and when he traveled time, he said he saw a civilization so advanced that they conquered the ether. He said when they conquered the ether, there was no more need for like growth and development. Like, you didn't have to grow trees to make wood. You could just make wood out of nothing. You could just manifest whatever you want without having to use like the existing materials, the minerals, because everything is made from ether. Now, when you look at a foundation of something, let's say literature, say you got a particular art or a particular philosophy, you got a patriarch or whoever started the philosophy, right? That philosophy has a traceable blueprint to it, a DNA in it. Everybody that's a proponent of that philosophy is a derivative of the original philosophy, and they're all bound to the rules of the person who started the philosophy. But the person who started the philosophy, they're not bound by the same rules as the ones that's following them, if that make any sense. So if ether is the foundation of all things, ether is not bound by the same laws that iron and air is bound by. Even though iron and air are derivatives of ether, they both have different laws. You know, iron falls to the ground. Iron is magnetized, but air is seen to be floating. You know, like animals. Certain animals got certain rules, but they claim animals all come from a so-called common species, but I don't think that's true. I think animals was designed. But when you look at things that we can look at, and we see all these different pieces of matter that have different rules and different policies, similar to, we have a diesel engine and we have a gasoline engine, right? They both function similarly, but they have different methods in which they function. See, a diesel engine is more advanced than a gas engine because diesel is not dependent upon a spark. You know, you don't have to have a spark to cause the combustion. It uses pressure. The pistons create an extremely high pressure. It pressurizes the diesel fuel. You can use any type of fuel. You can use bleach, but it pressurizes the fuel with the oxygen. And when it releases the oxygen and fuel back into the atmosphere, it combusts. But with a gasoline engine, you must have that spark in there. You know, it has different rules. But if you look at the metaphor of ether being a foundation of all matter, ether, if it's the foundation of all matter, that means it's not bound by none of the laws of matter. None of the laws. If you could control and master the ether itself, you can create all the atoms, all the matter, literally, because it's not bound by. It's like if you look at, say, for instance, most Western philosophy is based on Plato, Aristotle, right? And you look at how they deviated and branched off into their own particular methods of teaching the philosophy. You got Nietzsche, you got all these people, you got Marx. But the original philosophy, even though the original philosophy is not Plato, but it's still older. Plato's philosophy can be branched off into all of those different philosophies if you break it down, if you use deductive reasoning or whatever. But all of those different philosophies have their own particular principles and rules. They can't really go back. So the original always is superior, and the original has no real rules. You know, you created it, you can create something else. So the ether itself is what everything is made of, right? And thoughts say these people were so advanced, they conquered the ether, and they was able to manifest anything they wanted. They was making whole planets. They was making whole worlds from just ether. Like how in Star Trek, they got the replicator, and they got 3D printing. You could print things and try to, you could create meat without an animal. They trying to get close to it, but they really are, because when you use like artificial meat, you're still bound by materials that exist. Like you need soy, you need wheat, you need certain plants. It's plant-based. It's not like they're just pulling it out of the ether and just making plants or animals. But what I'm getting to, when you read the Bible itself, this is how the creation started. They say in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and he saw the light that it was good, and he separated light from the darkness, and called the night darkness day, and a day night. No. He separated the light from the darkness, and he called the light day and the darkness night, and that was the first day. Or was it the night and then the day, whatever. You can read it. But all of this was just manifesting out of nothing. Literally taking the ether and just making everything. Making planets, making the stars, making the animals, just making everything. Because you had dominion over the ether. Another thing in the Quran, see, the Quran go real deep into it, right? They go into it before the earth was even formed. No, they were still in heaven, and the God made the man, Adam. and then formed the man, taught the man everything, and told all the angels to bow to the man. But Iblis wouldn't do it. Now people look at that saying, okay, when the God told the angels to submit to man, he really told them to just obey man. But they don't really specify what it means. It's just up to you to interpret. And when Iblis wouldn't do it, Iblis was cast to the earth in his form, because he was a jinn. You had angels, you had jinn, right? And the jinn have free will. But Iblis is forced to be on earth without a body. But my opinion is this, because it's all opinion. It's basically pure truth, but you got to break it down. When he told the angels to submit to man, he really told them to dwell in man. Literally, the soul had to go into the man as a spirit. Iblis wouldn't do it because Iblis said his body is better. He didn't want to. But look, if you look at the tales that's talked about in the Bible and the tales that's talked about in the Quran, you see a common occurrence. And I'm gonna tell you about what King Solomon did. You had entities, you can call them jinns, angels that interacted with man. But in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, they say the sons of God came down and had relations with the daughters of men, and they had these children that was giants and Nephilims. Now, these so-called sons of men or sons of God that came down to the earth to be with these women, they really was probably the ones that didn't want to submit in the first day, but got jealous. So they probably made their own body, because the jinn has the ability to manifest things out of nothing, just like God. You know, they could create things from the ether because they have command over the ether. And Solomon, when he was given the wisdom of God, he knew this. He knew what the jinn could do. So Solomon put a whole legion of jinn in slavery and forced them to make things for him, to do his will. Like they could grant wishes. They could really, like you look at a genie, like in Aladdin, a genie can grant a wish from nothing. They have command and control over of the ether. But Solomon, he was teaching people how to put a jinn in slavery and how to force that jinn to do your wishes, to create things out of the ether, to make whatever you want, like wealth, whatever. They could make it for you, because they understand what the ether is, because they was there when it was all being done. You know, they know how to do it, but man don't know how to do it. So the only way man can actually have command over the ether, with its spirit to be magic, is to make a deal with the jinn. Now, when Solomon taught you how to make a deal with the jinn, he say the jinn, what they want more than anything is to enjoy the flesh. They want to partake. They want to partake in the pleasures of this world, which they can't really partake in. They could just observe. But he say the jinn will make a deal with the man, like they say when they say they sell your soul to Satan, whatever. The jinn want to coexist in your body, vicariously enjoying the earth, because they're not allowed to enjoy the earth, because they don't have a physical body. You know, but they could manipulate the physical world. They could manifest things, but they can't make a body for themselves. You know, they can't do it. But all of this out here is ether. You see what I'm saying? It's really just electricity. You know, and I think the ether is a bridge between the heaven and the earth. That's what interconnects. And I think the actual person, the human being, is not necessarily the body, because people think they are the body, like this body that they dwell in. But for one, this body was grown inside of a human being, totally separate. Like, it's a human being could grow in another human being and totally be separated. None the liquids, everything is separate. That shows you something right there. That is an invisible barrier separating all atoms, all materials, everything they're all bound by their own laws and rules. You know, every atom has its own rules. But the ether, like when they talk about a stem cell, they trick these women into getting abortions because they want these women to give them their stem cells, because a stem cell is superior to other cells that has organs. Just like I was talking about how ether is superior because it's a foundation, and it could manifest to anything, and it could do things that a particular atom can't do, or a particular piece of matter can't do. But it could do everything because it's the foundation of it. You can make anything out of it. Like you could use the ether and make any piece of matter, any molecule. Like you can make metal, wood. You can make energy. You can make oxygen. You can make all of that out of ether. But they could do the same thing with stem cells. They saying if they get these stem cells, and a person has a neurological illness, they could grow that particular. They could grow any organ out of a stem cell. They say it's the building blocks of all like organs and all material, all whatever the body has in it, a stem cell could reproduce it, because those are allegedly the building blocks. But they can't really make it without getting an actual fetus. It's not like they could just go and just make a body or just make skin, because they can't control the ether. They don't have that knowledge. They not advanced enough. But the jinn could do it though. The jinn could do it. But the jinn could make things happen. But I'm saying, okay, but Solomon say the jinn want access to your body, so they want to be able to drive cars, they want to get women, they want to experience eating food, taste food, they want to laugh, have fun, stuff like that. They're not, because they was cast out. Iblis was cast out, so the jinn had to be forced to live on earth without having a body, because they didn't want to submit to the man. In the Quran, in the Bible, the serpent was deceiving, and it was forced. You see the metaphors. The serpent deceived Eve, right? And told Eve if they eat of that tree, they would be like gods, never dying, whatever. And then when God saw in the book of Genesis that man ate from that tree, and said, "Who told you to do this?" Because in the Quran, the tree itself was Iblis. He said, "Don't eat." It was cast at earth and say, "When you eat of that tree, you will die." The tree itself was Iblis, but in the Bible, they say the serpent was Iblis, but the serpent was cursed to crawl on his belly for eternity. And you see that when you look at that, he has no mobile. That's like, if you interpret the serpent was cursed to crawl on his belly, that's like the serpent was not allowed to have this body. You see what I'm saying? Iblis, the jinn, was not allowed to be able to enjoy this body. They sneak around, creep around, making deals to coexist, to possess a person. Like a jinn to try to force their way into your body to get this world, to enjoy this world. But I'm this is what I'm talking about today. Some outside of politics, the wickedness going on with Trump impeachment. How really humanity itself, all they care about is getting food, clothes, and shelter. All the less fortunate countries in the world, they want access to America, because America is really the land of milk and honey. It's vast, abundant wealth, resources here that other people are not blessed with. And I believe, because thoughts say in Atlantis, they was doing things they was forbidden. I think they was able to conquer the ether in America. That's probably why we got so much gold. Where does gold come from? They probably made this gold from nothing, and they had to be stopped. Yeah, but that's all I want to talk about today. Something different, another aspect of thinking, something to think about. Outside of the misery of this world, the misery. But yeah, that's about it.